I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember. And I would even go as far as saying they're my preferred medium because it has so many different ways of putting you in the agency, putting you in the driver's seat of what the characters are experiencing and going through. And if you don't believe me, here's a cute pic to prove how long I've been about this shit. In a documentary about the debut game from Surgeon Studios, their founder, second generation British actor Abu Bakr Salim, said, "My dad understood that games were the only way in for me. I didn't really care much for anything else, and that's probably why my first venture into storytelling is through making a game." Honestly, words like that, they stuck out to me, and every time I need a little bit of a reminder of where I've come from, I tune back into that YouTube video. He's talked about in multiple interviews about the impact his parents' experience as immigrants to the UK had in his upbringing, and the uncountable ways he did not see himself in the media of the time or the customs of his family, not only in the media, but in the world that he came up in. It's a story I can relate to, you know? My parents brought me up here in the States, but not only were they not from here, but even my siblings were not born in this country. For most of my life, I was the only citizen of my family. And so there's a lot of burdens and expectations that kind of come along with that, whether my family knew it or not. I tell you all this not because I'm just ranting more about where I've come from and building a more parasocial relationship in a channel that only uploads once a year, but because out of all the countless things said on the internet of questionable utility, I want my thoughts about how a particular piece of artistic expression makes the case for how uniquely useful video games are as tools of contextualizing and navigating the world we live in, and I want that to live somewhere outside of my own head. Surgeon Studios' Tales of Kenzera ZAU especially stands out by interweaving original and adapted narratives, gameplay mechanics, and the spirit of recapturing purpose and happiness through sadness. And I, like many others, really needed this story. So we're going to talk about why. If the loudest grifters and provocateurs on YouTube throwing tantrums anytime there's a game about someone who looks like me are to be believed, Tales of Kenzera ZAU is just another diversity and equity and inclusion game being forced on a gaming audience that hasn't asked for it. This rhetoric is seeking to establish a foothold amongst people with no media literacy and has its origins in another Gamergate-like reactionary social movement, amassing ostensibly to protest narrative consultation groups and other studios' decisions they see as promoting a woke agenda, I guess. I had the heaviest air quotes imaginable, but obviously you guys can't see that in a video essay. But really, this doesn't exactly add up for anyone who has maybe a second or two to look into it. Echo some of the words from Stacey Henley from The Gamer when she said it's just the latest dog whistle for rejecting progressive ideas, and I couldn't agree with her more. As much as some people would like to pretend video games aren't just for the boys anymore, and to be honest, they never really were just for the boys. I know it's basically asking the internet to have a deeper memory beyond what's been popular in the last week, but if there's anything hindsight has taught people, it's that the Gamergate movement only made advances in instances where undue legitimacy and credence was given to those and their self-admitted uncharitable claims. That's not just my analysis though, or my opinions. Reactionary strategists like Steve Bannon have been saying for years about their desire and their aims to radicalize young disaffected boys and young men against what they call wokeness, which is just code for if there's anybody who's not white in a video game. It's interesting that these kind of expressed desires and crusades never seem to call out the massive decades-old wealth accumulation taking place by media executives like himself across all of TV, film, or gaming. But of course, those aren't the things that's destroying the gaming industry. Desperate gesturing at imagined hypocrisy like this is the main characteristic of this obfuscation. When they said it was about ethics in games journalism, we ultimately find out that it wasn't that animated them or motivated them. So why assume the dog whistles are genuine this time around? nah, we're not gonna fall for that. And that's not what we're gonna talk about here. I wanted to set the groundwork for what I think is like most of the YouTube videos that I see every time that I'm trying to see or kind of listen to some fun stuff about this game I really love. Tales of Kenzera ZAU is way more than that. This deeply personal story hooks players in with an incredible voice acting, score, and Afrofuturist setting, and then really keeps them going with the multitudes of ways that combat can be engaged with, and the pursuit of actually seeing where this young protagonist story ends up. The story seen in promotional material leading up to the game's release is actually a meta-narrative within the main plot. Not to get into too many of the spoilers, because I actually would love if more people can see what I fell in love with, but players are going to take control of a young man by the name of Zuberi, and he's a young man who's been navigating the loss of his own father alongside his mom. And in the process of experiencing this, loss and this grief, a struggling Zuberi comes into possession of a book written by his father before his passing, and sort of as a gift to him to kind of help him see and figure out what the road ahead looks like. Whether you've experienced losing loved ones or losing your purpose like I have, we can all come to understand how unavoidable grief is, and how each person should be entitled to their own approach and how they want to walk that road. As ZAU begins to explore the story, we actually start getting into the meat and potatoes and the gameplay, and we start to meet ZAU, and we're introduced to the land of Kenzera, a vibrant and textured world inspired by Maasai, Tswana, Kuba, Ndebele, Zulu, and more impactful to me, Xhosa culture, and the historical legends that are all entwined in that. ZAU is a shaman, like his old man before him, a kind of spiritual healer and figure of importance within his home of Amandla, and this sort of world that this encompasses. And to nerd out a little bit, Amandla is described in the game's codex as a place that's founded on progress and peace and people kind of being happy in a subtle, low-key lifestyle. But to those isiXhosa speakers or isiZulu, like me, who know kind of the weight of that word, like, come on, man. Naming the home of the main character after the word for power speaks volumes to what kind of historical strength and influence this region must have had in the past. The type of environment that values peace but is no stranger to incredible power kind of gives insight to those of us who've been looking for games that can relate to our lived experiences, a little sense of like what ZAU might be, what ZAU comes from, all those kind of things. I mean, for real, Sergeant, Abu, like if you're listening, that's the stuff we want to see more of. I'd love to see what that's about. But in regards to the story, ZAU is kind of irrevocably changed by death and the denial of death, much like the land of Kenzera, and he kind of goes on a journey to bargain with Kalunga, the god of death in this world, to appease him by bringing 3 great spirits that have denied him, in hopes in exchange to get the life of his Baba back. And I don't know about you, but I could completely relate to wanting to kind of do anything in your power to get back what you feel like maybe left too soon. It's a really heartwarming story about a young boy going to the distance for his family and just meeting all kinds of other people who are also like on the same path, maybe in different stages of grief, but equally all the same, affected and kind of never gonna be the same. Equipped with the sun mask and its dual Etoile spears and the moon mask's shields and projectiles, ZAU meets a lot of those people from different lands who kind of embody the anxiety, the fear, and the anger that reflects the state that he's in. And in that comes to see how much sense of those unspooled lives can be made better and made logical by assisting them and continuing on and thinking like, maybe this isn't just me and I'm not alone in how I'm feeling. And I think some contextualizing that really helps me when I've been in those kind of similar positions. I mean, it's a sentiment I found myself in multiple times, thinking about how I can have an impact where I feel kind of hopeless and powerless. And in a world where I can easily be more pessimistic, I think seeing how I can change other people and kind of touch them makes that feel less devastating. I don't know, but I just have to buy into something. And I think that hope that this game represents is palpable. I feel it. I mean, it's nothing like any game I think I've played before, or at least a game that found me in a certain stage in my life that feels so reflective, like a mirror. I mean, there's different instances of conversations where ZAU learns life lessons that even I've had to learn, or expresses struggles that I've never had the words to kind of put properly. Talking about how often the world hurts, how often it feels so indifferent to us. Kind of represent the more negative sides of the emotional spectrum we experience, but on the more positive sides, instances like the reflection trees that increase your health and kind of encourage self-reflection and encourage meditation. It's like, have you heard of that in a video game? I don't know, not me, not before at least. And those two sides, that duality, being able to feel that expression, being able to feel like it's real, I think that duality allows people who are suffering and maybe feel aimless to see that there is you in both sides, and one of them shouldn't be rejected in service of saying that one is more representative of who we are as people. That's the lesson I think Tales of Kenzera ZAU has taught me, and I hope that for you guys as well, it can give the impression that, you know, we contain multitudes, and there's a lot to us. Accepting that multitudes and accepting those multiple faces of what makes us us and humans is, I think, what Tales of Kenzera ZAU does so well. In regards to what it maybe doesn't do as great, I can understand the significant kind of issues with controls and sometimes the hiccups that come with some of the more arduous platforming sections, and some would say that there might be a shallowness to the enemy variety in the game. But I think for a debut title from a series that hopefully could be expanded into multiple different directions and, you know, exploring different narratives, I think it really sets up a great foundation for what video games can do in the field of storytelling, and like hopefully raise our expectations, because I don't think we should expect any less, especially whenever it seems like indie games and the indie landscape is really carrying what that means for people like me who aren't just trying to find another like live service game to sink thousands of hours into. I want my games to say something. I want my games to mean something. And I can't think of a game that says or means more at this current moment than Tales of Kenzera ZAU. So I hope y'all kind of appreciate this more kind of off the cuff, shooting from the hip type video. I really want to express some organic feelings, some first impressions right after playing this game and really exploring it and 100%ing it and giving my all to it. In one part, because like I said, I really don't want this to only live in my head, but also it's just like, it's kind of a drought for people who look like me and have the approach and the means that I do to kind of talk about this. You can only see so many chuds complaining about aspects of diversity on YouTube before you want to combat that and hopefully throw your name into the ring. So if you have any opinions that you had on the game or any similar indie games, I really want to have that part of my content creation personality cultivated, I guess I could say. I want to embrace it more as we move into the future. I've definitely kind of expressed a lot of sort of my morals and my values in my platforms before. I've explored so much more of the non-fictional storytelling that I can do with my reporting, and so I want to lean into a different direction with that, and I hope y'all enjoy. As usual, blessing to you and yours.